Michael, I want a divorce. Okay. When I heard my wife, Claire, deliver the request in that ice-cold voice, I froze for a second, but I still agreed. It wasn't that I didn't love her anymore. It was because when I proposed, I made her a promise. I would agree to anything she asked, unconditionally. It was her only condition for marrying me. For 3 years, I had kept that promise. Whatever she wanted, she got. This request was just a little different. I had no idea why she wanted a divorce. Could that one incident really have been so unforgivable? I couldn't wrap my head around it. She had agreed to it beforehand. In fact, she was the one who had asked for it in the first place. Claire and I went to Columbia together, though we were in different programs. She was a liberal arts major. I was in engineering. On paper, you might think we were a balanced match, but the reality was anything but. She was a New Yorker, born and raised, an only child from a family of academics, the kind where you could trace professors and writers back 3 generations. For her, getting into an Ivy League school was as natural as breathing. Me? I was a different story. I have a younger sister, and my family has been farming in Ohio for as long as anyone can remember. My dad could read and write, but my mom was practically illiterate. In my entire extended family, as far back as our records went, I was the first one to even go to college. It felt like a fluke, like our family plot had been struck by lightning, landing me in a school everyone back home could only dream of. We were the classic story, the small-town guy and the big-city princess. I'd actually had a serious girlfriend before Claire, back in undergrad. Her name was Tiffany Evans. Her background was a lot like mine, working class, hungry. More importantly, while we were from different states, our hometowns were practically neighbors, just an hour's drive apart. We clicked instantly, sharing the same jokes, the same quiet anxieties. But her ambition burned hotter than mine. In our junior year, she decided she was going abroad for her master's. Michael, she'd said, her voice sharp with conviction, a bachelor's degree is a dime a dozen. In a place like New York, you can't throw a rock without hitting 10 Ph.D.S. Going to Europe is the only way for people like us to truly break free from where we came from. Come with me. All those years of studying weren't just for ourselves. The moment she said that, I knew we were on different paths. I can't, I mumbled, looking down. I remember when she told me her plans. There were no tears, no dramatic pleas. I didn't try to stop her. I just wished her well, because I knew I had no right to ask her to stay. Everyone thinks in families like mine, the son is the one who gets all the attention, but the truth is the weight on the son's shoulders is a hell of a lot heavier. I couldn't just pack up and go. Tiffany could, because she had an older brother who had dropped out of school to work, funding her dreams. If I went, my family would be crushed by debt. My sister's own college plans would probably go up in smoke. And even if I worked my ass off, pay my own way without taking a dime from them, I couldn't just tune out the world back home and bury my head in books. When I saw her family loading her suitcases out of the dorm, I knew my first love was over. I fell into a funk after that, just drifting through my days in a gray haze. My roommates couldn't stand seeing me like that, so they signed me up for a month-long volunteer program building houses in rural Appalachia. A change of scenery, they said. That's where I met Claire. Having grown up in Manhattan, it was her first time in the countryside, and she was a walking embodiment of clueless curiosity. For me, a kid who grew up on a farm, it was like coming home. I was in my element. Why won't this fire start? Claire demanded, staring at a pile of kindling as if it had personally offended her. I silently reached over and opened the flue damper on the chimney. Why is this stupid bucket disobeying me? It won't sink, she cried on the verge of tears, staring down into the well where the water level was too low for the bucket to tip on its own. I took the bucket from her, gave it a gentle swing to build momentum, and brought the water up effortlessly. Hey, look at this. How do you... Her voice became the soundtrack to my days. I helped her with one thing after another. What might have looked like helplessness to someone else struck me as a kind of innocent purity. She was like a delicate, white butterfly, beautiful and completely out of place. And to her, my easy competence in that chaotic rural setting made me seem like some kind of superhero. So I saw admiration in her eyes, and she saw protectiveness in mine. It was the perfect recipe for romance. But she was reserved, and I was still nursing a bruised heart. So we both kept our feelings buried. When I got back to campus, I felt like a new person. The fog had lifted, my confidence was back, and I threw myself into studying for the GREs. I became a permanent fixture in the library. If it wasn't critical, I was there hidden in the stacks. Then one day I got there late, and there was only one seat left in the entire cavernous reading room. When I sat down, I realized Claire was sitting right next to me. I glanced at her, and she looked up at the same moment. We didn't say anything, just exchanged a small smile. Do you come here every day? How have I never seen you? She asked as we were leaving later. You're an early bird. I'm a night owl. We're like ships in the passing night, I said, trying for a bit of wit. She just stared at me with those clear, utterly baffled eyes. I felt a flush of embarrassment. Right? The joke fell flat with Ms. Park Avenue. I just mean our schedules are opposite, I explained. Well, I don't have class. You do. Us running into each other today was pure chance. We walked towards the dining hall as we talked. Ha ha, that's hilarious, she burst out laughing, a full minute later. I just remembered where I've heard that ships in the passing night line before. Her processing speed was a little slow. After that, we started planning our library trips together. I found myself looking forward to her texts every night when I got back to my dorm. The rest fell into place, naturally. We started dating, went through grad school together, and then graduated. Her family connections landed her a lecturer position at a university, while I had already started a small tech firm with a few friends during grad school, which was now starting to take off. In terms of income, I made far more than her, but my background always made me feel like I was a step below. In our relationship, I was always the one trying harder, the one walking on eggshells. But none of that changed the fact that I loved her, so I bent over backward to accommodate her. Even during our 3 years of marriage, she remained that same innocent girl who had never had to do a chore in her life. And I was happy to do everything for her. As an only child from her kind of family, she wasn't spoiled, but she was definitely self-centered. She had almost nothing in common with my family. I understood that, so I only ever took her back home to Ohio once or twice a year. If anything came up with my folks, I'd go by myself. Whenever my parents came to visit us in New York, she wouldn't say anything, but I could see she wasn't happy. Eventually, they stopped coming as often. Michael, my mom said over the phone one day, your sister Chloe is moving to New York for a job. I think her office isn't too far from you. Could you keep an eye on her? My sister, Chloe, is 4 years younger than me. Growing up, she was a total tomboy, always climbing trees and getting into fights. She was a handful, but maybe seeing me go off to college straightened her out. She started hitting the books and got into Ohio State, a great school. I remembered her telling me, years ago, that she'd follow me to New York one day. That night at dinner, after Claire got home from work, I brought it up. My plan was to help Chloe find a small apartment nearby, so I could check in on her easily. Claire paused, then looked up at me. But we have a spare room, don't we? Just have Chloe stay with us. It's not safe for a young woman to live alone out there. I was floored. Of course we had room. New York real estate is brutal, but between my savings, a generous gift from Claire's parents, and a little bit from mine, we managed to buy a spacious 3-bedroom condo. We had enough space for my sister, both our sets of parents, and then some. But knowing Claire, I never would have thought she'd be comfortable with anyone else, even my own sister, living with us. Since she was the one offering, I wasn't about to object. My parents might have favored me in some ways, but I absolutely adored my sister. Having her under my roof, where I could look out for her, I was thrilled. Claire is quiet and reserved. Chloe is a firecracker. She buzzes with the energy of a hummingbird on a sugar high and talks so much she could cure a Trappist monk of his vow of silence. From the moment she moved in, I was constantly worried she'd drive Claire insane. I watched them like a hawk, terrified a fight would break out. But slowly, I realized my fears were overblown. While Claire wasn't one for chaos, she was incredibly gracious to Chloe, always playing the part of the welcoming sister-in-law. It was Chloe, actually, who was the problem. I probably spoiled her too much growing up because she had no filter. Her moods were written all over her face. One minute, she'd be cuddling up to Claire on the sofa, and the next she'd snap at her with the same sharp tongue she used on me. Claire acted like it didn't bother her, but I knew better. I tried to talk to Chloe, even yelled at her a few times, but I couldn't bring myself to kick her out. Sometimes I wondered if there was something wrong with me. As the older brother, I felt this crushing need to take care of everyone, to carry every burden. I didn't know if that was right or wrong. It all just made me feel more indebted to Claire. So I doubled down on my efforts. Before, I treated her like a fragile piece of glass. Now I put her on a pedestal. Outside of her job, I handled everything. I picked out her clothes each morning. If she mumbled in her sleep about craving pancakes, they'd be on the table when she woke up. My father-in-law once told me I was spoiling her rotten, but I didn't care. I thought that's what a husband was supposed to do. The result was that I was constantly in motion, a whirlwind of activity, either orbiting my work or orbiting Claire. Most of the time, the two of them got along fine. Claire would take Chloe out shopping for clothes on her days off. But one evening, I came home from work and the air in the apartment was thick with tension. Chloe was sitting on the couch, staring at the floor, silent. Claire was in our bedroom, her face a thundercloud. It was the angriest I'd ever seen her. I didn't know what had happened, but I knew Chloe must have done something to set her off. I fell back on my usual routine. I went to comfort Claire first. But no matter what I said, she was unresponsive. Finally, she uttered a single sentence. "We need a divorce." Then she walked out, terrified she'd do something reckless in her anger. I followed her all the way across town until I saw her safely disappear into her parents' brownstone. I didn't go home that night. I didn't know how I could face Chloe. Yell at her? I couldn't do that. Not while I was this furious. I never make decisions when I'm angry. So I just found a bar and drank, telling myself if I was going to chew Chloe out, I'd do it after I'd cooled down. I sat there for hours, thinking about Claire, about my parents, about my sister. I wanted so desperately to make it all work, to balance all these relationships, but it felt impossible. The conflict between my wife and my sister was just a symptom of a larger problem. Sure, I could make Chloe move out. I could even tell them never to see each other again. But what about my parents? They were healthy now, living back in Ohio, but one day I'd have to bring them to New York to live with me. What then? I could yell at Chloe. She was my sister. But my parents? They'd worked the land their whole lives. Their stubbornness was etched into their bones. If I, their son, ever raised my voice to them, I couldn't even imagine what they would do. At some point, I must have passed out. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing. It was Claire. "Bring your documents. Meet me at the lawyer's office." Her voice was pure ice. The words shocked me back to sobriety. I thought she was just venting, that I could go over today, apologize, and figure out a way to smooth things over. But the finality in her tone told me this was real. I stumbled home. The apartment was empty. Chloe must have gone to work. My mind was a fog, but running on pure, conditioned obedience to Claire, I gathered up our marriage certificate, financial statements, and everything else I could find. Then I went to my office and printed out a separation agreement. It was almost noon by the time I got to the lawyer's office downtown. Looking at Claire's frozen expression, I knew there was no use in begging. "We don't need all this," she said, glancing at the agreement. "Just give me the money my dad contributed for the down payment and the car I drive. I don't want anything else." The agreement I drafted was generous. We'd split the condo's equity 50-50. Since I didn't have anywhere else to live in the city, I'd buy her out at market value, paying her back over time. I'd give her all the cash we had in our joint account, about $100,000. The car was hers, of course, and I'd even designated half of my company shares to her, so she'd get dividends. "I'm not signing unless you agree to these terms," I said, taking a deep breath. For me, this was a strategic retreat, not a surrender. It was just paperwork. There was a mandatory cooling-off period, anyway. Even if the divorce went through, I wasn't giving up on her. I just couldn't fight her head-on right now. I couldn't believe the love we shared could be erased so easily. Still, being cautious by nature, I made the agreement as fair as I possibly could, just in case. "Stop playing the saint," Claire muttered under her breath. "What did you say?" I asked, sure I'd misheard. We were fighting because of my sister, maybe even because of me, but a saint? A hypocrite? Nothing. If you insist on these terms, fine. I just hope you don't regret it. With that, she signed her name. How could I regret it? When it came to love, I was all in. As long as there was no infidelity, I would always assume the fault was mine. I was the husband. It was my job to fix things. And even if we really couldn't make it work, the last thing I wanted was to shortchange her financially. I had loved her for too long for that. The paperwork was filed quickly. Now, all we had to do was wait out the 1-month cooling-off period. It was lunchtime when we left the lawyer's office. I asked if she wanted to get something to eat, but she flatly refused. Maybe I never should have let my sister move in. Maybe then we wouldn't be here. Go home. I didn't want to. I had no idea how to tell Chloe what happened. I knew I wouldn't be able to control my temper looking at her. But if I told her we were divorcing because of her, how could she live with that guilt? At the end of the day, she was my sister. For the next few days, I didn't go home. I was determined to win Claire back. As long as we were still technically married, I could erase this whole mess, have Chloe move out, and pretend it never happened. I started showing up at her parents' place, or waiting for her after her classes at the university. But every time, she avoided me like the plague. "Claire, stop this. Let's just go home," I said, finally managing to corner her on her way out of the campus gate. "Michael, do you think this is a game?" she shot back, her voice laced with fury. "I'm telling you, we are over. When the time comes, we get the certificate, and that's it." "Claire, I don't want a divorce," I pleaded, grabbing her arm. "Can we please just talk? We didn't get married on a whim. Let's not throw it all away because of one fight. It's not fair to either of us. We'll regret this." "Don't call me that. It makes me sick. Just don't make me hate you." I never thought I'd hear those words from her. I couldn't understand what I had done that was so repulsive. If my parents visiting made her uncomfortable, well, they barely came anymore. If she was angry with my sister, I had taken her side every single time. Claire, let's make up. Let's have a baby, I said, pulling her into a hug. It was a desperate Hail Mary. Maybe after 3 years without kids, she felt insecure, like an outsider in my life. We had talked about it before and decided to wait until our careers were more stable. But now I thought maybe a child would make her see that she was the one I was meant to spend my life with. Slap. She shoved me away, her handprint stinging my cheek. What you just said makes me want to vomit, she spat, her voice trembling with rage. Who do you think you are? What do you take me for? Get away from me. I never want to see you again. She wrenched her hand free and stormed off, leaving me standing there, completely stunned. Maybe this was something that couldn't be fixed. Maybe I'd been naive to think it could. Maybe what she really wanted was for me to cut off my parents and my sister completely. I closed my eyes and tilted my head back, a cold resolution hardening in my heart. There was 1 week left in the cooling-off period. I hadn't been home since that day. I texted Chloe that I was taking Claire on a trip to clear the air. Now that it had come to this, there was no point in making her worry. I'd tell her after the divorce was final. I made a plan. After it was done, I'd go back to Ohio. I'd take my parents on a vacation for a few days, and then I'd bring them back to New York with me. Whether I ever got married again or not, I was going to live with my parents. They were probably the only people in the world who would never abandon me. Just as I had everything figured out, the unexpected happened. The next afternoon, as I was leaving my office, I saw her. Claire was waiting by the entrance. What are you doing here? I was shocked. After she filed for divorce, I was always the one chasing her down. I never imagined she'd come looking for me. I'm off work. I thought we could get dinner, she said, her eyes darting away from mine. I stared at her, baffled. Was she having some kind of hormonal mood swing? Yesterday, she was spitting venom at me, and today, she wanted to get dinner. Okay, sure. Let's go, I said. Despite my confusion, a flicker of hope ignited in my chest. She took me to our favorite Italian place, the one we always went to for special occasions. We made small talk, but remembering what she'd said last time, I steered clear of the divorce topic. After dinner, I could tell she wanted to say something, but was hesitating. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten the date to finalize everything, I said, trying to read her mind. I'll be there early. She was probably worried I'd be a no-show and try to drag it out. Forget it, she mumbled. I didn't quite catch it. What did you say? I asked, leaning closer. I said, forget it, she said loudly, looking right at me. I just stared, completely dumbfounded. What was that supposed to mean? I had just mentally prepared myself for a life of being single, and now she didn't want to go through with it? I just kept looking at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. What are you staring at? You've never seen me before. She tossed her hair back, clasping her hands behind her as she started walking away. Take me home. I still have some things at my parents' place. I mulled over her words for a second, then hurried to catch up. Are you saying you don't want the divorce anymore? I asked again when we reached her parents' building, just to be absolutely sure. The past few weeks had been a dizzying nightmare, and I couldn't take another twist. That's right, she said, meeting my gaze, enunciating each word. You go home tonight. Come over tomorrow afternoon and help me move my stuff back. Only after she said that did the knot in my chest finally loosen. She'd come to her senses. Whatever the reason, the fact that we weren't getting a divorce was the best news I'd heard in a long time. It was too late to go home. As happy as I was, I decided to stay at the hotel I'd been crashing at. I'd already paid for the night, and showing up now would just wait Chloe. One more night wouldn't kill me. The next morning, I skipped the office and went straight home. Living out of a hotel, even for a short time, had left me feeling grubby and disorganized. I needed a shower and change before going to my in-laws' place. When I opened the door, Chloe was sprawled on the couch watching TV. I was planning to have a serious talk with her. Even though this crisis was over, I couldn't let it happen again. If necessary, I was going to insist she find her own place. But before I could say a word, she spoke up. Hey bro, so Claire forgave you, huh? Let this be a lesson. Don't do things that make her suspicious. And you lied to me about going on a trip. Did you really think your brilliant little sister wouldn't figure it out? Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I just stood there stunned. What are you talking about? I asked, confused. Claire wanted a divorce because of Chloe, not because of me, right? Nothing. Just that you need to communicate better with your wife from now on, or you get misunderstandings like this. You guys almost got divorced over it. Chloe said it so casually, as if it were nothing. Tell me exactly why she wanted a divorce. I demanded, my voice rising to a shout. Seeing the look on my face, Chloe sat up straight, her playful demeanor gone. Well, it's because... After she finished explaining, I walked out of the apartment without a word, my face a blank mask. It turned out Tiffany Evans was back from Europe, and she was pregnant. The day of the big fight, Claire had taken Chloe shopping, and they'd run into her. Chloe knew Tiffany from my college days, and while Claire was browsing in a store, the two of them started talking. Chloe noticed that the timing of Tiffany's pregnancy lined up perfectly with a business trip I'd taken to London a few months back. As a joke, she'd asked Tiffany if the baby was mine. Tiffany, for whatever reason, was being cagey about who the father was and refused to say. Claire overheard the whole thing, and in the spiraling logic of her mind, she had pieced it all together and concluded that Tiffany's baby was mine. That's why she wanted a divorce. The reason she changed her mind yesterday? She had somehow confirmed that the baby wasn't mine. Hearing this, I was flooded with a complex wave of emotions. Anger, disappointment, fear, despair. I couldn't name it. All I knew was that the life force had been sucked out of me. I felt emptier than I had even when Claire first said she wanted to leave. At noon, I was waiting outside the university. I called Claire and asked her to come out. Honey, what's up? Why did you call me out here? We could have just gone to my parents' place this afternoon. And why did you book such a huge private room? She asked, sitting across from me as we ate. To be honest, I didn't know why I'd booked a private room for just the two of us. I guess I just felt like there was nowhere else we could have this conversation, because I suddenly felt like a complete and utter failure as a human being. Tell me the real reason you wanted a divorce, I asked, forcing the words out. Oh, come on. It's over. Why bring it up? We're not getting divorced anymore, right? She said, putting down her fork. So you've forgiven me? I said, my voice tight with suppressed rage. Yes, I forgive you. Honey, let's just drop it and enjoy our meal. But I don't forgive you, I said, slamming my chopsticks down on my bowl with a loud clatter. Michael, what's wrong? Claire jumped, startled by my outburst. I could see her physically flinch. A part of me felt a pang of pity, but I pushed it down. Claire, we've been together for almost 7 years. I continued, my voice trembling. 7 years. After everything I've done for you, do you really feel nothing? Couldn't you have given me even a tiny shred of trust? I can understand you having doubts, but couldn't you have come to me? Ask me yourself. Am I that worthless to you? What have I been in your eyes for the past 7 years? A liar? A scumbag? A hypocrite? Some dog you can call over and kick away whenever you feel like it? Even a murderer gets a trial. What gives you the right to be my judge, jury, and executioner? No, honey, that's not it. I was wrong. It was all my fault. I'm so sorry, she cried, rushing over from her chair to wrap her arms around me tightly. I didn't move. I let her hold me, but I kept talking. Do you know what I was thinking when you asked for a divorce? I thought it was my fault. I thought I'd failed you, that I couldn't manage our family life. I wondered if I'd done something wrong, if I wasn't good enough for you, if two people from worlds as different as ours should never have been together in the first place. No, Michael, you're wonderful. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have doubted you. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, holding my head against her chest. I pushed her away, wiping a tear from my own eye. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Let's get a divorce. No, Michael, we're not getting a divorce. I love you. Let's never talk about divorce again, okay? She pleaded, her lips trembling in panic. It's no use, I said, pushing past her and standing up. I thought, maybe I'm not a perfect person, but at least to you, I could be a good husband. But I was wrong. I walked toward the door. Behind me, I could hear her desperate cries, but this time, I felt nothing at all. I felt like my last 7 years had been a joke. No, not even that. You can't call it an effort if there's no acknowledgement. It was just wishful thinking on my part. I thought I was giving my wife my entire heart, but in return, I couldn't even get the most basic level of trust. I hadn't spoken to Tiffany since she went to Europe. If Chloe hadn't brought her up, I probably would have gone my whole life without thinking of her again. That trip to London was for a tech conference. I was only there for 2 weeks. It was only after Chloe told me that I realized Tiffany was living in the same city. When Claire suddenly wanted a divorce, and then just as suddenly changed her mind, I never once suspected her motives. I assumed the fault lay with me, that she'd just cooled down. But it turns out the old saying is true. The person who wrongly accuses you knows better than anyone how innocent you are. On the day we were scheduled to finalize the divorce, Claire was a no-show. I wasn't surprised. I'd expected it. Looking back on my years with her, it felt like everything I did revolved around her. Work was the only time that felt truly my own. I decided I needed a break. A real one. I went to the office and told my partners I was taking an extended leave of absence. We'd started the company together, and I'd been working like a machine for years. They didn't have much choice but to agree. Then, I filed a formal divorce petition with the court. With that done, I packed a bag and just left the city. No destination in mind. I figured I'd drive until the court summoned me back, or until I got tired of running. 2 weeks later, I found myself in Savannah. I had to admit, there was a unique charm to these southern cities. I spent my days exploring small, historic towns. It was a nice change of pace. That evening, I was walking back into my hotel when I saw a familiar figure in the lobby. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I rubbed them, looked again. No mistake. It was Claire. Then I remembered. Her university did an annual research trip for faculty around this time. It had to be a coincidence. I ducked my head and tried to blend in behind a group of tourists, hoping she wouldn't see me. I just get to my room and find a new hotel. Her group would be on a fixed itinerary. I could easily avoid them. Honey, can you grab this for me? As I was shuffling along, a familiar voice cut through the lobby chatter. I looked up. Claire was standing there, smiling at me, holding out her handbag. When she saw me look at her, she turned to a woman standing next to her and said with a cheerful smile, "Professor Lee, you don't need to worry about my room assignment tonight. I'll be staying with my husband. He happens to be here on a business trip." Business trip, my ass. This woman's audacity was something else. Husband. I was in the middle of divorcing her. I smiled and took the bag from her. What else could I do? Half the people in the lobby were her colleagues and students. I wasn't about to cause a scene and humiliate her in front of everyone. "Let's go upstairs, honey," Claire said, linking her arm through mine. Defeated, I led her up to my room. The moment the door closed, I pulled my arm away. She didn't react, just calmly hung her coat in the closet. The silence that followed was heavy and awkward. "I've already filed for divorce," I finally said. "There's no need for this." "So, we're not divorced yet. You're still my husband," she replied with a small smile. I had never, in all our years together, seen this shameless, stubborn side of her. The Savannah air was warm and pleasant, but the humidity was killer. After walking around all day, my clothes felt like they were glued to my skin. I didn't want to argue with her anymore, so I just walked into the bathroom. The cold water felt amazing. Normally, I'd be in and out in a few minutes, but because of Claire, I stayed in there for over half an hour. I just didn't want to face her. Finally, when I was starting to shiver, I got out. And there she was, sitting casually on the bed in a nightgown. The sight of her sent a jolt of heat right through my freshly cooled body. She was wearing a flimsy, pale pink slip. Her long, white legs were dangling off the side of the bed, and the neckline dipped low, offering a tantalizing glimpse of her curves. After all these years, she knew exactly what drove me crazy. I glanced over at the coffee table and saw 2 bottles of red wine that hadn't been there before. She must have ordered them from room service. I stood there, momentarily mesmerized, before something clicked. A detail felt wrong. On these academic trips, faculty didn't get private rooms. They shared 2 or even 3 to a room to save money. Even if she'd offered to pay for her own, it was against policy. And knowing her, she would never pack something so revealing for a work trip. "You knew I was here," I said. It was the only explanation. She gave me a look that said, "You're an idiot." I suddenly understood. I pulled out my phone. Sure enough, our shared Expedia account was logged in on another device. Before all this, I never would have thought to change our shared passwords. She could see every flight I booked, every hotel I checked into. "Come have a drink with me," Claire said, rising slowly and walking toward the wine. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was streaming into the room. On the floor, I saw the torn remnants of a pink nightgown. My mind was a blank. The next few days were surreal. Everywhere I went, she was there. "Aren't you supposed to be leading a group of students? Why are you following me around all day?" I finally snapped. "I took personal leave," she said, smiling at me. "There are plenty of other professors on the trip. They don't need me." I was speechless. Before, I was always the pursuer, and she was the one who passively accepted my affection. I never imagined that when she decided to take the initiative, she would be this relentless. She had already followed me to 3 different towns, and she showed no signs of giving up. Finally, one day, I got a notification from the court. Our divorce hearing was scheduled for the following week. The moment Claire saw the notice, she left. No argument, no plea. I figured she finally understood that my mind was made up, that the divorce was inevitable. I decided to head back to New York in a couple of days. The time away had done me good, clear my head. It would have been even better without Claire shadowing my every move. When I got home and opened my apartment door, I froze. Sitting in the living room were not just Chloe and Claire, but my parents as well. "Mom, Dad, why didn't you tell me you were coming?" I asked, rushing over to them, shooting a glare at Chloe over their heads. "Don't look at me. It wasn't my idea," Chloe said, holding up her hands in surrender. "Claire said she wanted to surprise you. My mother said, beaming at me. Surprise? A year ago, this would have been a wonderful surprise. Right now, it was a nightmare. My divorce hearing was in 2 days. This woman was holding my feet to the fire. I never knew she had such a manipulative side. I thought she'd left because she'd given up, but she'd gone to get reinforcements. My parents adored her. They'd spent their whole lives in a small farming town, surrounded by people like me and Chloe, loud, rough around the edges. To them, Claire was like a movie star. They were convinced I'd won the lottery by marrying her. During dinner, Claire suddenly pulled out a pregnancy test. I had no idea what the lines meant. My parents had never seen one before. But Chloe took one look at it, and her eyes went wide. I'm going to be an aunt. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. So that's what this was all about. Her following me, the seduction. It wasn't a last-ditch, passionate plea. It was a calculated move. A checkmate. In that moment, I finally understood the crushing weight of being caught between your parents and your future. Honey, Claire whispered to me that night, her arms wrapped around me. Do you still think I don't like your family? Did I think? Wasn't it obvious? Before I could answer, she continued. I grew up as an only child in a very quiet house. My parents were always busy. I got used to being alone. The truth is, I love your family. You know my personality. I'm not good at expressing it. Every time I'm with your parents, you think I'm being cold, but inside, I'm so happy. I just don't know how to act around them. From now on, let's have them live with us. Her words made me pause, and I realized it was sort of true. She could be distant with my parents, but she never argued with them. They could be overbearing in ways that even I found hard to tolerate, but Claire had never once shown any impatience. Then, after a long moment, my mind cleared. Wait a minute. The real reason I wanted a divorce was her complete and utter lack of trust in me. How do we get sidetracked onto this other topic? She was brilliantly redirecting the entire conflict. I wanted to get up, to fight, to scream, but in the end, I just let go. I was tired. So tired. A marriage, I thought, should be built on honesty as clear as water. Only then can it last. The next morning, I called the court and withdrew my petition.